It all began with a moment that almost no one expected. Imagine a smaller nation deciding to confront the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built by the United States, a ship so massive and so powerful that it functions like a floating city with its own airport, defenses, radar networks, and thousands of trained personnel. That's the scene the world woke up to when Venezuela challenged the USS Gerald R. People across the region were shocked because this wasn't just a military encounter. It was a political message, a risky show of power in a situation where even a tiny miscalculation could turn into something far more dangerous. The tension didn't appear out of nowhere. It built gradually when the U.S. Navy positioned the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group close to the Caribbean Sea, a region already filled with sensitive political relationships and ongoing disputes. For many countries, the arrival of such a massive naval presence is seen as a signal, sometimes a warning. In Venezuela reacted exactly that way. Their government announced that they would not remain silent or passive, and within hours, Venezuelan patrol ships and fighter aircraft began moving closer to the area where the U.S. forces were operating. For the people watching from the outside, it looked like a bold move, but inside military circles, experts immediately understood how delicate the situation had become. The USS Gerald R. Ford is not an ordinary ship. It represents the highest level of U.S. naval technology and strength, equipped with advanced aircraft, electromagnetic launch systems, intelligence tools, and communication tech that can watch and listen across huge distances. Venezuela, on the other hand, does not possess anywhere near that level of capability, which made the confrontation feel uneven right from the start. But pride, politics, and the pressure to appear strong in front of the world pushed Venezuela to respond. And once both sides had their eyes and weapons pointed toward the same area, the risk of a misunderstanding increased dramatically. As Venezuelan ships drew nearer, the early moments were filled with tension. U.S. aircraft adjusted their patrol routes, making sure they could track every movement without appearing aggressive. Meanwhile, Venezuelan crews tried to maintain a close but non-threatening distance, trying to show that they were not afraid, even though the power difference was obvious. Radio channels filled with short, cautious messages, each side trying not to say anything that could be taken the wrong way. Behind every step, every maneuver, and every radio call was a mix of anxiety and calculation. Both countries understood the stakes. For Venezuela, backing away too quickly would look weak. For the United States, reacting too forcefully could spark a crisis they didn't want. And in the middle of all this was the Gerald R. Ford itself, calmly moving forward like a giant in the water, fully aware that its presence alone was enough to shift the atmosphere of the entire region. This was the moment the story truly began. Not with weapons firing, but with two nations trying to prove something, knowing that even a single wrong move could change everything. The situation became even more dangerous once analysts began breaking down the forces involved. On paper, it looked like a simple standoff, but in reality, the imbalance between the two sides created a level of risk that most people watching from the outside could not immediately understand. The USS Gerald R. Ford is not just another military asset. It represents decades of technological development, massive budgets, and global power projection. It carries advanced fighter jets, surveillance aircraft, early warning systems, and layers of defensive weapons that can detect and intercept threats long before they come close. Its radar systems can track multiple objects in the air and sea at the same time, and its communication network gives it real-time information from satellites, drones, and other ships across the region. This level of capability means the carrier can operate almost independently, controlling the battle space around it with precision. Venezuela, in contrast, does not have anything close to this scale of technology or resources. Its navy consists mostly of older patrol ships and limited-range aircraft, many of which have been affected by years of financial challenges and maintenance issues. While they can patrol their own coastal waters effectively, going up against a full U.S. carrier strike group is an entirely different situation. This difference in power didn't just affect military strategy, it created psychological pressure as well. Venezuelan forces were under orders to show resistance, but they also had to avoid triggering a response that they could not handle. This balance, trying to look strong without crossing a line, made every movement extremely sensitive. Another reason the situation became so dangerous was the political climate around it. When tensions rise between two nations, military units on the ground often feel compelled to follow aggressive orders, even if they know the risks. One small mistake, an aircraft flying too close, a radar lock gone wrong, a misunderstood radio message, could lead to a chain reaction. And once a confrontation begins at close range, there is very little time to correct it. That is why military experts around the world were watching the situation closely, warning that incidents like these don't always escalate because of intention. They escalate because of miscommunication. Adding to the danger was the presence of multiple vessels and aircraft operating in a relatively narrow area. The Caribbean Sea is not a massive open ocean like the Atlantic or Pacific. When several ships from different countries move around each other, even routine maneuvers become stressful. A patrol boat crossing in front of a U.S. destroyer or a Venezuelan jet flying too close to a U.S. aircraft could be interpreted as a hostile act. Even weather conditions and sea currents can complicate movements, increasing the chances of accidental collisions or misread signals. What made the moment even more intense was how each side interpreted the other's intentions. The U.S. saw Venezuela's moves as political posturing, while Venezuela believed the U.S. presence was a provocation. Neither side wanted to back down first because stepping away could be seen as weakness. And that unwillingness to retreat, combined with the extreme difference in military power, is what turned this encounter into one of the most dangerous standoffs in the region in recent years. As the standoff continued, the world watched closely, wondering if it would escalate into something far more serious. When Venezuelan patrol boats began moving closer to the USS Gerald R. Every action had to be calculated with precision. The U.S. Navy did not respond with immediate aggression. Instead, it relied on strategy, careful monitoring, and overwhelming technological advantage. Aircraft from the carrier increased their patrols, drones hovered above to capture real-time intelligence, and radar systems scanned every movement. Communication channels remained open at all times, ensuring that no misunderstanding could lead to a sudden escalation. On the surface, it may have looked calm, but inside the command centers, officers were working non-stop to track every detail, anticipate every possible move, and coordinate responses in case a dangerous situation developed. The goal was clear: maintain dominance, demonstrate readiness, and avoid unnecessary conflict. Venezuelan forces, meanwhile, attempted to assert themselves without provoking an immediate military response. Their ships shadowed the carrier group, maintaining a delicate distance meant to send a message without directly threatening the U.S. forces. Pilots and naval officers were acutely aware that one wrong maneuver could trigger an international incident. Despite having fewer resources, Venezuela tried to use psychological strategy, positioning itself in ways that would show determination while avoiding open confrontation. This approach was risky because it relied on restraint from both sides, knowing that any misstep could be interpreted as hostility. The situation became a careful dance of strategy, patience, and observation, where both nations had to read each other's intentions constantly. The standoff also highlighted the vast difference in military capability between the two forces. The Gerald R. Ford is equipped with systems that can neutralize threats long before they become a danger. Advanced electronic warfare systems can jam or confuse enemy communications, while fighter jets can strike targets far beyond visual range. In contrast, Venezuela's forces had to operate within limited parameters, aware that their options were far more restricted. The U.S. Navy's response was measured and precise, emphasizing deterrence rather than aggression. Each patrol, each drone flight, and each radar sweep served a dual purpose: monitoring the situation and reinforcing the overwhelming superiority of the carrier strike group. Despite the tension, the confrontation never turned violent. Both sides made calculated decisions to step back when necessary. For Venezuela, this meant realizing the risks of pushing further against a force they could not match. For the U.S., it involved demonstrating dominance without unnecessarily escalating the situation. Over time, the standoff de-escalated as each side understood the limits of the encounter. What remained from this tense period was a clear lesson in modern naval strategy: power projection, technology, and careful communication can prevent conflict, even when intentions are unclear. The encounter became a textbook example of how modern standoffs operate, where raw military might alone does not decide the outcome. Instead, strategic patience, situational awareness, and careful planning play a critical role in managing potentially dangerous situations, keeping a volatile moment from spiraling into disaster. By the time the standoff ended, it became clear why challenging the USS Gerald R was considered such a risky move. The encounter demonstrated the enormous gap in capability between the two forces and the importance of understanding modern naval power. While Venezuela may have intended to send a message of resistance or strength, the reality of facing the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world was far more complex. The U.S. Navy, with its combination of technology, experience, and readiness, had effectively controlled the situation without firing a single shot. This outcome made one thing obvious. Confronting a force so well prepared and equipped comes with consequences that cannot be ignored. Even though no physical battle occurred, the standoff itself was a powerful display of deterrence, showing how the presence of advanced military assets can influence decisions and behavior in international relations. The incident also highlighted the role of strategy and communication in modern warfare. Both sides knew that escalation could lead to disaster, so every movement was measured and deliberate. The United States relied on its overwhelming technological advantage to project strength, while Venezuela attempted to navigate the situation carefully, trying to demonstrate courage without crossing dangerous lines. The encounter revealed that modern conflicts are rarely about direct confrontation alone. Instead, they involve careful positioning, psychological strategy, and a constant understanding of risk. In this case, the United States used restraint and skillful monitoring to maintain control, while Venezuela realized the limits of what it could safely do. This balance prevented the situation from becoming a full-blown crisis, but it also sent a clear lesson to the world about the power of modern naval forces. One of the most important takeaways from this standoff is how quickly situations can become tense in regions where political and military interests collide. Even a brief confrontation when one side is significantly more powerful can have wide-reaching implications. It also demonstrates that strength is not measured only by willingness to fight, but by the ability to control the situation effectively. The USS Gerald R. Ford's presence acted as a deterrent without firing a weapon, proving that technology and strategy can sometimes achieve what direct conflict alone cannot. For Venezuela, the incident became a reminder that challenging forces far beyond one's capabilities can backfire, no matter how strong the political or symbolic message may be intended. In the end, the standoff between Venezuela and the USS Gerald R. Ford serves as a lesson in caution, strategy, and respect for modern military power. The encounter ended without bloodshed, but it reinforced the idea that in today's world, power projection, technology, and careful planning often determine outcomes more than aggression alone. Both nations walked away with lessons learned, one side in the power of readiness and deterrence, and the other in the dangers of overestimating one's influence. Modern naval encounters are as much about perception, communication, and calculation as they are about weapons. This incident will be remembered as a case study in how even tense confrontations can be managed through strategy and restraint, proving that sometimes the biggest victories are the ones achieved without a single shot being fired.